Warning: contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
This is one of my favorite parts of this interview Jordan Peterson did with the British GQ. And you can make quite a highlight reel from this interview that's an hour and 42 minutes long. But in this part, Tommy Robinson and Count Dankula are brought up, and I think Jordan does a masterful job of reframing the issue and exposing what this woman believes to the audience. And I think what's chilling about this is that I don't think she even is aware of how horrible she comes across here and how unconscious she is of her own shadow. So let's have a listen.
I don't feel oppressed.
Good, I'm pleased to hear it. But I do think that the way that you got the cheers from that crowd was very much about, there was an idea of taboo breaking, right? That oh, this is a microaggression, but I'm going to say it anyway, that, you know, hard work is the way to succeed. And I thought that was fascinating, because to me you don't look like somebody who has particularly suffered an outrageous amount for your opinions. People have certainly disagreed. They've been rude. They've in some cases.
The only reason I haven't suffered an outrageous amount for my opinions is because I've handled the consequence of their utterance exceptionally well. My job was at risk. My career was at risk. My family stability was at risk. So I wouldn't push that one too far.
In what way was your job at risk?
Jesus. Last year, 200 of my fellow faculty members signed a petition to get me fired. That was only one of a dozen things that happened. The university wrote me 2 letters, 2 cease and desist letters from their HR departments with their legal staff. 3 of those and you're done. They just fired Rick Maida in Canada at Acadia University for talking about many of the same things that I've talked about. So
this is interesting. You're going to hear sort of 2 sides of this from people who oppose Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan's official stance is what he's saying here, that his job was in danger. But you're going to hear some critics of Jordan say, well, he's totally overstating that. His job was never in danger. And I think that's the position she's trying to hold here, or she's trying to expose Jordan to and her listeners to. The other side, again, critical of Jordan, will say that, well, he is such a bad guy that, look, he almost lost his job because he had all his fellow professors sign this petition, and so the university sent him 2 cease and desist letters and so forth. So he's such a bad guy that he's barely holding on to his credentials. And so it's interesting how his opposition will hold either view depending on who they're talking to or who they're trying to convince, and sometimes they're going to hold the same view or both views simultaneously. So I thought it's interesting just to see how this is the stance that she's taking here.
the fact that I've come through this relatively unscathed has very little to do with the vitriol of the attacks. There was plenty of motivation to take me out. It just didn't work.
Right, and I think the fact that it didn't work, to me, makes me ultimately optimistic about where we are, because
Why?
Because I went on, I did a panel a while ago with Zarganara, a Burmese comedian, who was imprisoned for making a joke, right? And we are not yet at that stage. I think, undoubtedly,
We're not. We're damn close.
Really?
How about the guy with the pug in the UK?
Count Dankula.
That's the one.
Right, but he did actually, I mean, that
was a joke.
Look at how the incredulity on her face and the face that she's making here. Now, of course, the camera angle is not that great to see it, but her reaction is very telling. She is totally unconscious. She brings up the comedian who was imprisoned for comedy, and she's completely oblivious to the fact that she's one of the people who would persecute comedians. She's one of the people who would put other people in jail for telling jokes. And now Jordan exposes this.
You might not have liked it. I didn't say it was a good joke. I didn't say it was an appropriate joke. I didn't say any of that. I didn't say it was a well thought through joke. But it was a joke.
Yeah, I just fundamentally don't believe that it was a joke. I believe that it was camouflaged as a joke, and that's what it kind of comes across.
Right.
And I
well, that's exactly what you would believe if you were inclined to persecute comedians.
Mic drop. Someone should do an edit of this. Someone who can do professional editing. I can't do it. I don't have the software and so forth. But have him do a mic drop right there, because that's applause worthy.
No, I'm not inclined to persecute someone.
Well, you're inclined to persecute him.
I don't think he's a comedian, and I don't think I would have to go and look at the circumstances of that case. But I think
He didn't like his girlfriend's pug and thought he would teach it to do something reprehensible as a joke.
Right, but I see you getting involved, say, tweeting Douglas Murray's article about Tommy Robinson, and I think you see that as a free speech issue, and that's not how I see Tommy Robinson's case at all. I see that as contempt of court, someone who endangered a grooming trial. How do you see that case?
I see it as very fortunate that Tommy Robinson didn't die in prison.
Another mic drop moment. And I want to try to enunciate that in case it's hard to hear. I'm saying mic drop. I know sometimes I might mumble. So even if you Iron Man her position, and I was somewhat familiar with Tommy Robinson, seeing as I watch Owen Benjamin live streams whenever I can get a chance. And you know, he wrote that song for Tommy, and I was actually watching that live stream when he was composing it with his community there. But I went and I did a little bit more research, and so even if you Iron Man her position and say yes, he was endangering the trial and so forth, and you lay that all on the table and just give that to that position, give all of it to that position, it's still not worth, as Jordan pointed out, his life. Someone who has a contempt of court violation or charges should not be executed. And he very well could have been executed for his contempt of court charges, and this does not even faze her. And she then goes on to try to rationalize it. And this is as much as the leftists appear to be the side of feelings, and the right tries to take the side of facts, logic, reason, argumentation, like Ben Shapiro. You need both. And here she's going to rationalize. She's going to use, reason to sort of find her way out of this little corner that Jordan has her in. But it really does come across as just rationalizing away the death of someone for something that's not really worthy of a death penalty.
I think I would say that about a lot of people in prison. I think it's very hard to be in prison if you are a sex offender, for example. I think our British prisons are less inhumane than American prisons, but they are still brutal places to be. However, I do think that was an appropriate punishment for somebody who tried to collapse a grooming trial.
Well,
but are you a prison abolitionist?
no.
Oh, right, okay. So you do believe that some people, there are offences for which people need to go to prison?
Why would you ask me a question like that?
Well, I'm
Do I
just
look like
interested.
someone who isn't interested in meting out appropriate punishment?
No, but I just thought maybe I've made an assumption about you. And I didn't want to make an assumption about you.
BITCH. I'm sure that, look at Jordan's face right here. That's what he's thinking. And really, she's well deserving of the title. I can't even believe, like, my jaw dropped when she started asking him this stuff. And I'm sure it's just because he just totally owned her in this little back and forth. Masterfully reframing her positions, she came off as totally unconscious, totally evil, comparing Tommy Robinson to a sex offender. God knows, what is she saying? It's tough for a pedophile to be in prison? Yeah, it sure is tough, and they deserve all the tough brutal acts that fall upon them in prison. They're fucking pedophiles. Tommy Robinson wasn't a pedophile. He had contempt of court charges. That's not worth a death sentence, and here she is justifying it, rationalizing it. Anyway, this is going to be a short video. That's all I wanted to highlight in this hour and 42-minute video. I'm going to do more highlights, but I thought this was a good one to start with, in addition to my previous one where Jordan battles alien chaos. So if you like this sort of thing, hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you.